relation to some comments that you've made on a Facebook page.
Hello, Elon? Yeah, things aren't working out anymore. Have you still got space on that rocket to Mars? Hate crimes, free speech, and social media. We have a lot to cover. And in this video, we're going to be discussing whether the law is fair for everybody, whether everyone is equal under the same law, as they should be. Asking the questions as to whether the police are going too far, whether this is overreach, whether George Orwell was actually right when he spoke about the thought police. And we're even going to delve into some controversial cases, which I'm sure you'll enjoy. And if you stay to the end of the video, we're going to discuss why this is going to get much worse before it gets any better. If this is your first time seeing my face, my name is Darkmoore and I'm an ex-police officer of just under 10 years. And on this channel, I talk about the police, I talk about political topics, and I talk about my own experiences in the police. I also use my policing experience to write crime fiction, and if you enjoy a good thriller, then check out my best-selling crime series, the Detective Lord Warburton series, Book 1, Left 4 Dead, available now on Amazon. The link is in the description of this video. When I look at how the UK police are conducting themselves right now, and I see the failings, what are happening in other areas, I'm like, come on, get your fucking priorities straight, guys. What are you doing? Now, of course, the police's job is to make people safe and to keep law and order. However, the issue with things such as hate crimes and things said on social media is that it is completely subjective. What you might deem as offensive, I might laugh at, and this is the difficulty when it comes to legislating speech, particularly online, when a lot of communication is done through body language and tone of voice. If you just have a piece of text on a computer screen, it's very hard to get context, and the only way to get that context is purely by the subjectivity of the person looking at it. This then means that many people can look at the same thing, and if one person is offended, then a crime has been committed. The Public Order Act, the Malicious Communication Act, and so on. And of course, when speaking about the Public Order Act, speaking about being able to speak your mind freely in a free space, that is again like walking through a minefield for a few reasons. Firstly, if you cause somebody to feel harassment, alarm, or distress, you can be arrested under the Public Order Act. Now, there are several stages of the Public Order Act. The first one being simple speech, not directed to anybody, just your general conduct. And if somebody finds it offensive, then you can find yourself in the back of a police car. You haven't intentionally targeted somebody, you have just acted in a way which has caused somebody somewhere to feel alarmed. Now, what does feeling alarmed mean? Is there a limit to how alarmed somebody has to be? Is there some kind of scale? What about distress? They see something, they find it distressing. Well, what about if 10 people are stood in a line and one person finds something distressing but 9 other people don't? We are now saying that you can be arrested for making somebody feel uncomfortable. Regardless of whether you intended to or not, you can be arrested for that. But again, this just speaks to overreach and policing people's thoughts and feelings, and when it comes to public spaces, of course, we can't have that now, can we? One serious example which has been in the news where the police have just massively overreached and gone way too far was the case of Chelsea Russell. In 2017, Chelsea Russell lost a friend in a car accident. She's a 19-year-old girl from Liverpool, and her friend died in a car accident. As a tribute to her friend, Chelsea posted something on Instagram with a Snoop Dogg song, and the Snoop Dogg song used the N-word quite frequently. Somebody somewhere found this offensive, and they sent a screenshot of this to Merseyside Police. It landed on the hate crime unit's desk, which, when you think about it, they have to justify their existence. So if they get something through, they're more likely to take action rather than not. Because if they get a report and they take action, regardless of whether a real hate crime has been committed or not, but we'll get more into that later. Chelsea Russell was then arrested, charged and convicted and placed on a tag for 8 weeks, had to pay court fees and a victim subcharge because the officer who dealt with that case stated, "As a black woman, I find this grossly offensive." 1,000 people could have seen that video. One person found it grossly offensive. And the issue with this subjectivity, it's not a case of saying, did you hit them or didn't you, something which we can measure. It's a case of going, did that upset you? And if it did, I then can't say it didn't. So based on your own personal, subjective point of view is whether a crime has been committed or not. In the world today, people, I would say, are getting a little bit more sensitive than they would have been maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago. So that means that this issue is only going to get greater.
If someone has been caused, obviously, anxiety based upon your social media page.
The issue when it comes to social media posts and people's feelings and subjectivity of those posts are only going to be amplified. And unless the police stop being incentivized by statistics, this situation is only going to get more extreme. When policing becomes statistic based, then we lose our morality. This person posted a tribute and they posted a song, which is, you know, you can download and listen to the song at any point. But because one person found it offensive, that person was charged and convicted of a crime purely based off somebody's own subjective opinion of what that person did. And people may say, well, that's justified. Well, let's have a look at that, shall we? So how much would it be to investigate this incident? So say the police officer has been in for 3 or 4 years, okay? Average salary of a police officer, 3 or 4 years, let's say £30,000 a year. Right, now let's divide that by 52 weeks and let's divide that by 40 hours. So they're on £14.40p an hour. Say it took them 8 hours to investigate this crime. That's to receive the report, write it up, speak to the supervisor, go out, effect an arrest, and then interview the suspect. Right, so that's £115.30p. Okay, so somebody spending time in a police cell is approximately £350. So then let's do that. I was then told by a defence solicitor that they get about £90 per representation they make, so let's add that £90. So then this person would have been released on bail, say if they got the prosecution file ready quite quickly, and then it was sent to the Crown Prosecution Service to review. CPS lawyer salary. CPS lawyer salary around 55,000 a year, so let's go 55,000. Say that they took 4 hours to review that case. That's £105.70p. So then this person's been charged. That incurs more police costs, that incurs more police time. They have to go back to custody to answer bail to be charged, unless the postal summons, but that probably won't happen if they're on bail. So then this then goes to Crown Court, and Crown Court is approximately £10,000 a day. So for the sake of this person posting a song lyric online, we are looking at around £10,500. Does that seem appropriate to you, considering that this person's conviction was actually overturned in 2019? And this, of course, is just one of many cases which the police have overreached, overstepped, and have arrested people based off purely subjectivity. And it's no wonder why, when people have their houses broken into, the police say, we just don't have the resources to investigate, pal, I'm really sorry, here's a crime reference number, speak to your insurance, don't bother us again. It's really upsetting when you think about it. The fact that somebody's feelings are more important when it comes to the law, that they are willing to spend over £10,000 to have somebody prosecuted over a song. Now, when it comes to actual hate crimes, I think that these do have their place in society and in law, but they are so subjective and so open to abuse. And the thing with a hate crime is, if I say something to you and you don't deem it offensive, then everything's fine. But if somebody walking past believes that it is offensive and a hate crime has been committed, it gets logged as a hate crime. Hate crimes are the only piece of legislation, really, that I'm aware of where somebody who's not involved in the incident at all can deem it to be as such, and therefore it's treated as such, because it's all about what people think. We are policing people's thoughts, and it's fucking insane. I once had somebody make a report that they were cheating on their partner, their friend found out, their friend then said, you are mentally unstable. That person had mental health issues and believed that to be a hate crime. So then I had to investigate not only a potential malicious communications, which it fucking wasn't, but it was now a hate crime. And for a police officer to get something declassified from being a hate crime is really, really difficult. And it really makes you think, why is there such a strong emphasis on hate crimes? Why is there such a strong emphasis on policing people's thoughts? It really does make you think about what kind of society we are living in. In 2024, the UK had a lot of riots based off something absolutely horrible which happened to some small children. And naturally, people were outraged by this. The fact that the UK was releasing hardened criminals, the nasty things what we want people in prison for, were then being released in order to free up space for these thought criminals. And the police were actually allocating resources to officers, setting up dedicated groups of officers.
And we do have dedicated police officers who are scouring social media. Their job is to look for this material and then follow up with identification arrests and so forth.
To scour the internet to then find posts, statements, tweets, Facebook statuses that they may deem to be stirring up racial hatred. Now we've gone from people reporting things to the police to now the police actively seeking out things what they may deem to be offensive and then prosecuting people for it and throwing them in prison. And it doesn't stop there. I've dealt with a case where somebody on Fortnite, a young kid, 12, 13 years old, called somebody else a bit of a nasty name, a racial slur. Kids are horrible to each other. You spend 5 minutes around kids playing and they are awful to each other. But because this kid kid said something nasty to somebody else who they haven't ever met before, and they were on opposite ends of the country. I had to investigate this 12-year-old boy, and I had to say, you can't do that, and I had to get him to send a letter of apology to this other person who he'd never met, who he called a nasty name while playing Fortnite. And I'm like, I have much better things to do in my time. People say that you join the police to help people, and you do, but the issue is, with the way the law is and the way crime recording works and the pressures put on you as a result of that, it becomes nearly impossible to actually dedicate your time to the things what you want to do, such as catching burglars, locking up drug dealers, putting perpetrators of domestic violence away, because you're so tied up with all this other shit. In George Orwell's book 1984, the thought police are the secret police who monitor and punish citizens for thoughts and ideas that are not approved by the ruling party. In other words, you cannot think something, you cannot express yourself in a certain way that does not align with the political regime. Is that what we have now? Is freedom of speech dead? We didn't really have freedom of speech in this country anyway, but I think that there should become a kind of test which is applied when it comes to cases of stirring up racial hatred. I believe that we should have something like America have, where an actual test has to be applied to see whether this is in fact a crime or not. And this is what they have in America, the Brandenburg test. Now, I hadn't heard about this up until recently, thank you Andrew Doyle. And this was a case, Brandenburg versus Ohio in 1969. Now, Brandenburg was a KKK leader. He was an out-and-out racist by the sounds of it, and we don't want people like that in society. And he was convicted for stirring up racial hatred in the state of Ohio. However, he successfully appealed his conviction because he managed to argue that his speech, albeit inflammatory, did not constitute for immediate action against this racial group. I think we could adopt something like this in the UK, in the sense of when we are looking to arrest somebody for a hate crime, we have to look at, okay, well, has what they have said had a direct implication and result of what has happened in society around us? If somebody says, you need to go and do X, Y, and Z to this particular group, and then we see a spike in offences against that group, and they say, yes, well, I saw it online, therefore I decided to do it, then okay, we can say, well, that has caused this. But generally that's not the case, and generally people don't act on something they see online purely because they've seen it online. We are human beings, we have our own minds, and we are able to weigh up the pros and cons of going out and doing something heinous like that. Does it happen? Sure, of course it happens. People see things online and go, okay, well, I'm going to go out and do this as a result of what I've seen. But they're very fringe cases, and what we are doing is we're adopting something which should really apply to the fringe cases to a much wider, broader aspect under the guise of here to keep you safe. But of course, when it comes to these cases, then somebody must say something or commit an action which would perpetrate or constitute a hate crime being committed. Surely they must do something which then creates upset or pain and disgust in somebody else. That's not always the case. In 2022, Adam Smith Connor was arrested for silently praying outside of an abortion clinic. Now, this person is clearly religious, and silently praying is his way of expressing his own views on what he believed to be an immoral practice. Now, of course, abortion is a very contentious topic. Some people are pro-life, some people are pro-choice, and that's fine. Do what you like. You're not hurting anybody, but the police didn't see it that way. The police arrested Adam Smith Connor for simply thinking and praying something in his mind. And if that isn't an example of the thought police, I don't know what is. And this does ask the question, are we basing the law off how someone feels rather than what harm is actually being caused? And of course, if you have a big enough channel, if you have a big enough following online, if you say something online to 1 million people, chances are a few people aren't going to like it. So it's a way of self-censoring, and it's a way of making you shut up, because the threat of the law is always above you at all times. But then we get into the topic of non-crime hate incidents, and this is a fucking minefield. Oh my god. It's no longer enough to commit a hate crime. Now you can have a knock on the door from the police for saying something in the privacy of your own home for a non-crime hate incident, which is essentially a way of saying, we need to make sure that you're not doing anything you're not supposed to do, and you're not thinking the wrong things, you buster. Ironically, in the UK, you can't actually section somebody if they are mentally unwell, if they are in their own house, because an Englishman's house is considered his castle and it's a safe zone. So you can't be sectioned for being mentally unwell in your own home, but you can be visited by the police for thinking the wrong things. How in the world does that make sense? A couple of cases in point with this were Harry Miller in 2019, who was actually an ex-police officer, and he was visited by the police over a tweet which he posted to do with views on transgender ideology. He received a knock on the door, the police turned up, and he was told that he hadn't committed a crime, but but he would go on the police database anyway for committing a non-crime hate incident. There have been stories of children who've called each other nasty names in the school playground, like I said before. Kids are fucking horrible. About a grown-up. There was a case of Caroline Farrow in 2022 investigated for malicious communications regarding transgender activism. If you go to Scotland, it's now illegal to misgender somebody. They're talking about bringing in misogynist laws, blasphemy laws. They are doing anything possible to legislate people's speech, and very clearly how people think as well, even in the privacy of their own home. There was also Alison Pearson, the journalist who was visited by police for a tweet she made 12 months prior, deleted the tweet, but somebody somewhere took a screenshot of it and then sent it through to the police, and the police knocked on her door on Remembrance Sunday of all days, a day of remembering the brave and the strong who have fallen in the face of tyranny, and they had police officers knocking on her door saying, you are acting in a tyrannical way with the way you're thinking. The irony in this interaction is palpable. And again, let's look at the cost of this. So it's estimated that 60,000 police hours are spent each year investigating non-crime hate incidents. So let's have a look. So the average salary of a police officer is around £30,000. The top scale is about 46 now, I think, and the bottom scale is about 21, 25, something like that. 30,000 divided by 52 divided by 40 makes it £14.40. Times that by 60,000. That's £865,384. And yet people's winter fuel allowance is being cut because we don't know where all the money's going. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? So just under £1 million is spent each year investigating non-crime. You know when people say the police got nothing better to do? I can see where they're coming from now. Maybe instead of policing people's thoughts, we could look at, I don't know, topics such as domestic violence, which costs the UK economy £66 billion a year. Or look at the modern slavery epidemic we have currently when it comes to child sexual exploitation and child criminal exploitation. Maybe we should put our efforts into that rather than scrolling the internet every day, all day, trying to find offensive tweets, which somebody somewhere might find offensive at some point. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Patreon section where I'm going to be discussing how this legislation is going to be abused and how we should really be worried about this in the future. When you get into the thing of legislating speech and legislating people's feelings, then you're in really murky waters because the lines get blurred so quickly. One person may be convicted of one thing and this next person could do the exact same thing but not be convicted, and of course if that person isn't convicted then that becomes then case law and say, well, this person wasn't convicted for the same thing, so why is my client being convicted for it? So the difficulty of what we face now when it comes to these kind of things is we are spending so much time, money and energy and resources on non-crime hate incidents, legislating speech, legislating thoughts, convicting people for things what they say and think, regardless of the outcome, regardless of whether that directly caused somebody to go out and do something. The very fact of that you said it is enough, and I can only feel that the reason why there's such emphasis on this is because it's easier to detect, because the police will get funding based on how many detections they get at the end of their financial year. They submit their crime statistics to the Home Office and then that dictates the funding. So rather than investigate someone's burglary or rather than investigate a serious case of stalking, it's easier to go for the low-hanging fruit and go, well, we can see this post here, this person said they was offended by it, therefore with subjectivity the crime's been committed, and it's an easy detection and it's an easy charge. It's the only reason why I can think that we're doing this so much. And the difficulty what we're going to get now is with the current government, we have Yvette Cooper, who's now the Home Secretary, who's in charge of the police, is believed to be wanting to strengthen the approach to non-crime hate incidents. More things recorded, more visits by the police, more money spent, less time for police to spend to tackle actual crime. Are these really the people we voted for? Did we really vote for this? Do we really want this to happen? I'll leave that question to you. So if you enjoyed this video, please follow, like, subscribe. If you want to see some of the Patreon only content, links in the bio. I'm also writing a book about my experiences in the police. The book is called The Job's Fucked, Secret Diary of a Police Officer, and you can order it right now on Amazon. Until next time, see you later.